during digestion, long-chain polypeptides, proteins, are broken down into monomers, amino acids. Amino acids are then either going to be oxidized to make ATP, like we saw previously, or used to make new proteins in the body for growth and repair, hormones, and enzymes. Almost immediately after digestion, amino acids are reassembled into proteins. Many proteins function, as I mentioned, as enzymes. Others are used in transportation. Think about the role of hemoglobin. Or can serve as antibodies, or clotting factors like fibrinogen, hormones such as insulin, or the contractile proteins in muscle fibers, actin and myosin. There are other proteins that are going to serve as structural components of the body, collagen and keratin and elastin. Every day, protein catabolism occurs in body cells, stimulated mostly by cortisol from the adrenal cortex. Now, proteins from worn-out cells, like red blood cells, are broken down into amino acids. Some amino acids are going to be converted into other amino acids. New peptide bonds are formed and new proteins are made. It's all part of the recycling process. Hepatocytes are going to convert some amino acids to fatty acids, ketone bodies, or glucose. So cells throughout the body oxidize a small amount of amino acids to generate ATP in the Krebs cycle and in the electron transport chain. So we're constantly breaking down or catabolizing proteins. Protein anabolism, or making new peptide bonds between amino acids, is going to be producing new proteins, and that's happening in almost every body cell. Because proteins are the main component of most body structures, we've got to have an adequate dietary supply of protein, and it's especially essential during the years that we're most actively growing, or when females are pregnant, or when tissue has been damaged in case of disease or injury, and we have to have a lot of repair and rebuilding. Once dietary intake of protein is sufficient, we've got enough coming in, eating more protein is not going to increase your bone or muscle mass. Only a program that has forceful weight-bearing muscle activity is going to cause us to build more muscle. So of the 20 amino acids in the human body, 10 are what are called essential amino acids. So they have to be present in the diet because they can't be made in the body in adequate amounts. So it's essential to consume them. Proteins that are known as complete proteins contain a sufficient amount of all the essential amino acids. Beef, fish, poultry, meat, and eggs are examples of food that contain complete proteins. An incomplete protein doesn't have all of the essential amino acids. So things such as leafy green vegetables and beans and peas and grains. Non-essential amino acids are the ones that our body can make or synthesize. Alright, so the next few slides simply have a summary of metabolism, walking you back through glucose catabolism, breaking down that glucose and what we're doing with it, making that ATP in the different stages, glycolysis, converting that glucose to pyruvic acid, creating a little bit of ATP. It's an anaerobic process that doesn't require oxygen. Then we have the transition phase where pyruvic acid is going to be converted to acetyl-CoA that is going to enter the Krebs cycle. In the Krebs cycle, we're going to continue that breaking down or catabolism of glucose, creating a little bit of ATP, some CO2 and water are going to be byproducts. These are aerobic reactions that require oxygen, and remember, along this process, we're packing our suitcases, taking taking electrons and hydrogen ions from this catabolism and packing them in our FAD and NAD so we can use them later. The next step of the process, of course, is the electron transport chain, where the suitcases are going to be unpacked. So in another series of reactions, those electrons that we packed are going to be released, and the energy used to create ATP. The hydrogen ions that were also added to our FADs and NADs are going to be used to bind with oxygen and create water. So breaking down glucose, what do we do with it? Well, we can convert some of it into other products, and we can convert other products into glucose. We store excess glucose in the form of glycogen, and that should say converted, not convened. So if we're not making ATP from that glucose, we can build up those long-chain polysaccharides, the glycogen, and store it for later. When we are breaking down fats, we break them down into glycerol and fatty acids, which we can use to create ATP, or we can store some of those fats for later. Building or anabolism, building fats. We can make these triglycerides from glucose and fatty acids, and that's a process called lipogenesis, generating lipids. Other triglycerides are going to be stored in the adipose tissue. Protein catabolism, breaking down those long-chain polypeptides into individual amino acids that can be oxidized in the Krebs cycle to convert a bit of ATP. We can also take those amino acids and build body structures, build proteins and other functional proteins from those amino acids.